Again, my name is Karen Bridges. I'm with Water Systems Council, and today I'm going to talk about well owner calls to our national WellCare Hotline. Just a little bit about Water Systems Council. We are the only national nonprofit organization with programs focusing solely on private water wells and small shared wells. Some of our goals are to protect the users of well water, safeguard the capital investment that exists in wells, preserve groundwater resources, ensure safe drinking water supply for all Americans, and to promote wells as an affordable, common sense drinking water system. A little bit about the hotline. It has been in operation since 2003. It's a national hotline, staffed by the Water Systems Council, and it's a free service provided by the Water Systems Council, and as Steve said, it's supported by a grant from the US EPA. So what do we do? Our goal is to help well owners, basically with any question that they could possibly have. Here are just a few: water testing quality, well care basics, septic system questions, helping to identify potential contaminants in their water, even seasonal water problems. So there are obviously too many to list, but we help with any question they have. If we can't answer, which there are obviously many, we find a local professional resources for them. Just looking at the call volume through the history of the hotline. Again, we began in 2003. Don't believe it was actually a full year, so call volume's a little low for that year. But annually, we see about 3,000 calls. You can see from 2013 to 2015, call volume was very low. We actually did not receive EPA grant funding for that year, those years, so we did not receive the referred calls. But again, you can see in 2016, calls have rebounded, and we again are receiving EPA funding, and we received 3,400 calls this year. So who is calling our hotline? Very clearly, well owners are calling our hotline overwhelmingly. But we do receive calls from just, so many other people, real estate, realtors, I should say, mortgage companies, they're looking for testing information for their clients, trade businesses, plumbers, electricians, even laboratories. We've received, I personally have received a couple of calls from laboratories asking us to call their clients to help them understand, what their test results are, or to help them, determine what they really should test for. So we get, calls from just about anyone, but overwhelmingly calls are from well owners. And this is 2016 data. I didn't include it, but I looked back through the historical data, and this is very representative. So between 70 and 80% of our calls every year are from well owners. So why are they calling? Oh my gosh, I have information missing. Okay, well, I know it. I'm just wondering, why is it missing? That's okay. And I know it. So the purple represents testing, and I believe the number on that was 37%. And I'm sorry that it's missing. It's actually, is it? Well, okay, I'll apologize for the other errors that are actually in the slide in the book. The purple wedge represents about 37%, and that's actually testing. Oh my gosh, everything's missing. So, yeah, I don't know why it's not there. So purple, 37% testing. The super dark blue, it's about, I don't remember what the percentage is, but that represents treatment, questions about treatment. And the medium blue, 17%, represents questions about different contaminants. So that represents about 65% of the calls in 2016, those three categories, testing being the greatest, most common reason for calling. And I put a little blurb at the bottom. The light blue and the green, those are kind of catch-all categories. General information represents calls that are directly relating to wells. Hey. And then, thank you. And then, so the green represents miscellaneous. That's actually catch-all for calls that are indirectly relating to wells, like help trying to find a well log or financing for a well, things like that. So excluding those, catch-all categories and the small ones, 65% are, the calls are testing contamination treatments. Sorry, we've gone too far here. Okay, so again, why are they calling? We have identified testing as the most common reason for calls. And I did go back through our database back to 2008. That was actually when we began recording more detail about the calls, so that's as far back as we could go. But excluding the few years that we didn't receive the EPA funding, very regularly testing has been the dominant reason for calling, regularly between 30 and 40% of the calls for that year. The dark blue at the bottom represents the contamination, so you can see that we receive a lot of calls on that as well, and then the dark blue at the top represents the treatment. So pretty regularly that represents the makeup of the calls, the most common reason for callers to call each year. And we've identified testing as the most common reason for calling. I wanted to go over a couple of the questions, the most common testing questions that we receive. And the first question is the one I receive the most: how do I test my water? From new well owners to, well owners people who've been on a well for, a couple of decades and maybe just have never tested, and for whatever reason decide now I need to test. Many people just don't know where to start, so we're able to kind of point them in the direction of how to begin that process. Other questions that we hear are, what should I test for? We're able to help them identify different contaminants they should test for, or point them in, like I said, in the direction of resources that can help them. What do my test results mean? Often I hear I got an encyclopedia, it's just full of numbers and I have no idea what this means. So we're able to help them with that as well. And how often should I test? So once they begin testing, how do I continue this? I'm gonna try the forward, nope. Okay, so calls by contaminant. I remember this as well. So I actually pulled that purple wedge out. That represents others. And the 5 colored wedges actually represent arsenic, coliforms, lead, nitrates, and radon. So overwhelmingly, those are the contaminants that we receive calls about. That is 2016 data. Oh, there it is. That is 2016 data. Unfortunately, limitations with our database. Limitations with our database didn't allow me to go back to past years. So what I did is, I know you can't read this, but just so that you know it's available, this is a poster that summarizes a study by the CDC in 2014. They actually went through our calls for 2013 and kind of pulled out some of the data that I just went over, the most common calls and contaminants and things. And just a couple of notes, they also, identified that testing was the most common reason for calling. Well owners are the overwhelming callers to the hotline. And then of note is the 5 most common contaminants called about: coliforms, radon, arsenic, nitrates, and they actually have it as other metals, but we have lead. So that pretty much supports or agrees with what we have in 2016. Can't say that's representative of all years because I don't have that data, but kind of supports that. And so this is geographical representation of where we're receiving calls from. You can see Texas and Florida, we received the most calls in 2016, followed by California, New York, and Pennsylvania closely. It looks like, obviously, we receive most of the calls from the East Coast, Midwest, and the West Coast, but not much in the West. Doesn't apply to this talk, but it would be interesting to see how that kind of relates to, how how many wells are there? So I don't have, many reasons to explain, why we receive calls from where, but that would be interesting to see. And so this is actually just a list of the top 10, the 10 states that we receive the most calls from. Again, Texas, Florida, Pennsylvania, New York, California. Just wanted to note in Texas, we actually, probably the reason for the high call volume in Texas was a lot of flooding. We received a lot of calls after the flooding events there on how to get started with testing their well. And obviously in Michigan, lots of calls about lead, which probably increased our calls through all states because that's become, a national concern. But interestingly, Pennsylvania, prior to 2016, because this is 2016 data, prior to 2016, Pennsylvania, every single year prior to that, was the state that we received the most calls from. So I don't know why that is, but that would be interesting to find out. Many states, we refer folks to contact their health department, contact their university extension office. And I think in Pennsylvania, if there is anybody here from Pennsylvania, I don't think the health department has a private well program. So I wonder if maybe that has some influence on that number. Right, and that's who we usually refer to, but usually we have, the option to refer to both, and unfortunately in Pennsylvania, I think that's who we end up referring folks to. Excuse me. And so does the WellCare Hotline help? The CDC actually suggested, good suggestion, to follow up with well owners to see how our information, our recommendations impacted their situation, their questions. We have not done that. Currently, we are looking at implementing something, facing staffing issues and funding issues right now. So we are looking into that. But what we do know is that after callers call the hotline, they are more informed. We either answer their question or we get them in touch with somebody who can answer their question. So that's what we do know, is that they are more informed after calling the hotline. Although we haven't followed up with well owners, we do make note of comments made by callers. These are just a couple of examples. This one was pretty interesting. There's actually a caller dealing with a contamination issue right now, and he's working with Aaron Brockovich's law firm. And he actually said, I would never have had the confidence to pursue this had I not called you guys and you guys given me the information that you did. So he is pursuing that currently. We actually receive several calls from a scientist in New York from the state's attorney's office. He's putting together a program right now. He's using some of our information sheets. And he comments every time like, this is great. I absolutely love what you guys are doing with this program. And the last example is probably the most common that I get from well owners. They're just really, really grateful that a service like this is available. Often, the callers actually reach us because they Google, what do I do? Water testing. And we come up. So they give us a call just, as a place to start. So they're really grateful for that direction just to kind of get them started down the right path. And I mentioned our information sheets. Water Systems Council does publish information that to help well owners as well. We have a 32-page well owners manual that we updated in 2015, and over 90 information sheets on. That was me. Over 90 information sheets on a number of topics from anything: septic systems, radon, different type of treatment systems and the common costs. We even have information sheets on for like sanitarians, for professionals, sanitarians, real estate agents, to kind of help with some common questions. So all that information is available online, free of charge to anyone. And so the hotline is available 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Hotline website is wellcarehotline.org, and we now have a new chat service. Again, all of that is a free service provided by Water Systems Council. Thank you so much. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Karen? Could you go to the mic? Thank you.
Is there a chance that you're going to be putting in your manual, the blue manual, information on proper disinfection and shock treatment and that type of information? That's what a lot of them are looking for.
You know, I am reasonably new to the hotline. I haven't torn through the manual. It may be in there. We do, oh, it's not in there. I will make note of that and discuss that. We do have an information sheet on how to disinfect your well, and that is available online. But I will discuss how to put that in, to put that in there.
I was just wondering if you've seen a rise in emails and using the live chat.
A rise?
Just phone calls.
They're not highly used. There are, peak times, during the year, through the spring and summer, we see a lot more emails. Chat service isn't highly used. We receive many more calls than we do emails and chats, very few. But it is new, so hopefully we'll see an increase in that.
Karen, just a quick question. Do you have any either data or just anecdotal information about how people are finding your hotline? Like, I know we have our, in Wisconsin, we promote the well owner manual as a hyperlink, but we don't necessarily promote the hotline. So I'm just curious if you have a sense of how people are finding your hotline.
I really don't. As I said, I'm reasonably new to the hotline, so I may not have, an understanding of where all of our information is available. There are reasons for me to visit many state sites for other programs that I do at the Water Systems Council. Oftentimes I'll actually see our link, maybe on somebody's website, a health department or a state website. We have a program called the Well Owners Network, where we have members where we send out quarterly newsletters. We also have, social media, so we online media posts, and it's often promoted through there as well. So those are some of the different places that it's promoted, but I'm probably missing a few.
You had a slide on calls by contaminant, and so it was the top 5, and then other was 37%. I'm not sure if you talked about what comprised that other, or if that was driven by what was in the news. I saw the publication on PFOA and PFAS, emerging contaminants, or what is sparking people's interest.
Right. The other category was anything that wasn't those 5. So it could have been anything. And we actually, when we're recording calls, we've got a list this long to try to, record that information. The contaminant list, as you probably know, can be very, very long. That's what the other category was comprised of, just anything that wasn't those 5. So. I know, I'm sorry, it was really short.
Hi, I'm from North Carolina, and I was just curious from North Carolina Public Health, if I was curious to see what residents are calling about from North Carolina, could we get that information from you?
I would say right now, I could say I don't see that as a problem. I would have to, ask that question of my executive director just to make sure I'm not breaking any rules, but I'm more than happy to look into that and get back with you.
Okay, I'll be in touch.
Sure.
So the data is available by state. It's just whether or not you can release it.
Well, I can tell you that we did an update to our database in 2016, so I don't know all the capabilities, but I do know that we record, the state for which state the call comes from for each call. So I should say it's a possibility.
Right. Don't leave yet, but thank you, Karen.
Well, the perfect segue. If we could continue the discussion from the prior talk, how do you give product information? So say if I'm a well owner and I've been advised to take action. I have a degree in engineering. I go to the Menards or the Home Depot and I'm baffled by all the products out there, other than to be skeptical of anything they promise.
Yeah.
So how do you give specific recommendations to a homeowner? And this is, again, a follow-up to the prior discussion. Do you give model recommendations? Do you refer them to consumer reports?
No, I'm not a trained water treatment professional, so there's a lot of specifics we don't get into. That would be something that we would refer them to a water treatment professional. The Water Quality Association has a wonderful website that we use often, use the search function on their website. So I refer a lot of folks there. NSF has a website. We refer folks there if they're looking for specific information on specific treatment devices. So we refer them, but that's again how we direct callers to find the answer that we can't provide. Like, we're not able to answer all questions, but we do help them get to somebody who can.
Just call Steve Wilson.
Yeah. I should change that on the website.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you guys.